That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Comic Reviews that is starting right on time when it was announced, but kind of later in the evening. Sorry about that. Been working on another project and needed to clear up some of the evening, so I wasn't sure if Comic Reviews was going to go up tonight. But hey, here we are. It's up. It's going down right now. Meet me in the comments. It's going down. I'm sorry. I apologize. You deserve better from me. Anyway, we're not going to wait too long for anybody, but for anyone watching this after the fact, if you didn't see my announcement video last week, I am starting a new series, or not necessarily starting a new series. Let me put the brakes on that right away. I'm considering starting a new series, so I'm doing a pilot episode on February the 10th. We'll be doing a live hangout thing talking about Batman the Man Who Laughs. So if you like comics, if you own a lot of graphic novels and stuff, we're starting a book club. I want to do something, kind of want to do it on a monthly basis, but I need to see how it goes. So testing the waters and starting a comic book club, and we'll be talking about Batman the Man Who Laughs as the first thing. There are a couple of requirements. I'll leave a link to the announcement video where I go into it just in more detail, but in case you didn't know, now you know. And you've got a little while to, get a hold of it. Anyway, I think it was the 10th of February. I hope I didn't fuck up that date. Oh, oops. Let's just hope for the best and expect the worst. Anyway, not a ton of books to talk about this week. For singles, I've got Mystik Book 2, Harley Quinn number 36, Star Wars DJ Most Wanted number 1. That's it for singles this week. It was slim pickings, that fifth week in the month kind of thing. And then for trade talk this week, we're continuing Batman No Man's Land and going on to Volume 2 in the series. So anyway, let's not waste any more time. Y'all are here for comic reviews, and I got stuff I gotta do related to the episode after the episode, so let's just get going and start off talking about Mystik Book 2. This is still a very, relatively expensive series, and I don't even remember how long it's been since I talked about the first issue. I want to say it was like November? It feels like it's been a minute, though. Like, no lie, it feels like it's been a while since I picked up the series. I had to try to recollect my thoughts on what was going on in it. I will say this issue felt like an improvement tonally and, and as far as just believability for what the characters are dealing with. This felt more, just natural compared to the first issue where it's just like, oh no, my father's gone. Okay, guess I'm gonna go on this scavenger hunt at my new school where I'm gonna learn magic. Just whiplash. That turn was so quick. This one feels like Zatanna's kind of accepted the inevitability that she can't do anything to help her father right now except try to get better at magic. So she's kind of frustrated and she's trying to learn how to get better at magic. And there's this line in here that I quite liked, and it becomes a recurring line, and I thought was really interesting and a cool way to look at it. Magic doesn't like effort. It doesn't respond well to desperation or frustration or need. You have to play magic like jazz. Learn all the rules of structure and technique and rhythm and pattern, and then break them. I like that. That's a neat way to think about it, and it kind of shows what Zatanna as a character is going through right now, because she wants to be able to save her father and yada yada yada, but she has no idea what she's doing because the way in which she discovered her magical powers was, kind of condemning her father to hell. And so it's just, she's in this, situation where she wants to learn more, but she's falling behind all of her other classmates, and it's becoming very frustrating for her. So this does an interesting little, like, you know, school style story that just fits it, I guess, wherein she kind of falls in with a bad crowd because she's chasing certain goals. She's damn near completely unable to use magic compared to all her other classmates because she's so used to practicing and perfecting something like it's a craft, whereas, as this implies, magic is a more natural talent that it doesn't like effort put into it. It's more, it's not generic, it's more organic than that. I think that's an interesting idea, that it's a natural force and it needs to be commanded naturally, not forced or meticulously applied. So that's a really cool idea. But anyway, she falls in with this crowd that's like a sorority of evil women, like a beehive sorority that kind of pool their magic together for the greater good of the hive. And we get some really trippy and, you know, frankly scary visuals in that big climactic moment. That was pretty cool to see. You know, I too have had college experiences where some sorority girls turned into giant bee monsters, so I find this relatable. But it gets pretty freaky, and you know her friends show up to try and save her and stuff, and they have to all work together. So it's interesting because the sorority sisters want to kind of, you know, overtake Zatanna and force her into a hive mind to use her magic, which she has in abundance. She's just not able to tap into, to use her magic. But Zatanna doesn't want that because it's very forceful. And her friends and her, in order to defeat these sorority sisters, pool their powers and use them together in, you know, in the same way but in a consensual way. And it's also interesting because on the cover we've got bad romance down there, and like kind of one of the other through lines of this issue is a budding romance between Zatanna and Faust. So there's this conversation where she kind of throws herself once or twice at Faust, trying to essentially seduce him, and because he, in order to use his magic, needs to stay so in control of himself, he keeps rejecting her advances and stuff. And her friend Pi tells Zatanna, listen, he's telling you no, and you're not taking the hint. So how would you feel if the situation was reversed? So there's this interesting notion of consent built in throughout here. So thematically, I think that's pretty strong, and a lot of that's working. There's also just some, you know, good, solid relationship, you know, young person relationship thing. I hesitate to say the word teen, though they're certainly acting like teenagers. I stepped over myself and said it was like, I thought this was high school, but they do mention at several points this is an allegory to college, which, I mean, they're still teenagers at college, obviously. You know, freshmen are 18, 19 years old, for the most part. So that's, you know, it certainly fits. It's certainly plausible enough that they could still be teenagers. But again, it's just working for me. It's effective now. It's more effective now. It feels like more time is passing. There's a cool little montage moment where Zatanna's kind of getting hooked on this group magic that these girls are using. And so she's seen getting better at magical skill. And that's just interesting to, you know, it's an interesting device to not have to say several weeks pass, but you get the feeling that weeks are passing, or at least days here. So that's just, you know, it's more effective in its use of structure and writing. It's also definitely nowhere near as busy as far as pulling your attention to a bunch of different things. Sorry if there's an audio error. I gotta move my mic a little bit. It's not pulling your attention so much. Like, you remember in the first issue I complained that, like, there'd be 2 or 3 different conversations going on in one panel, and it'd be demanding a lot for you to follow the action all the way through. This didn't have that issue at all. So overall, the second issue of the series is a marked improvement from the first. But that's all I've got to say about that one. Let's see here. Live comments. Jake Carlson says Mystik U #1 was November 29th, so it's probably a bi-monthly series. Okay. Alright, that'll do it for Mystik U. Let's go ahead and go on to Harley Quinn, number 36. Again, something I bought entirely for the cover. I went on this about Harley Quinn number 35, how much I loved the cover of her as a woman bat. I thought it was a really, really cool design on Harley Quinn as if she were to become a woman bat. And if I've got any artists besides Jake, since I know Jake's busy with stuff, if I got any artists that follow me, can I just propose a series? Can you just do the entire Batman Rogues Gallery as Man-Bats for me and the world, because it clearly needs it? Like, I don't want to put too much pressure on the artistic community, but I feel like doing the entire Batman Rogues Gallery as Man-Bats is probably going to solve all the world's problems and give us world peace. Just saying. But anyway, Harley Quinn number 36. So I've gushed so much about how much I love this design for Harley as a woman bat. Not so much in the interior. Harley Quinn, I try so hard with you. I really do. I so want to love Harley Quinn in the comics and stuff, because I find that the character can be really interesting and really fun and cool to just do neat stuff with. But every time I read a Harley Quinn comic, I'm disappointed. There is one exception to that, and that is Joker's Asylum Harley Quinn, which I will always recommend to people. But man, that is just so generic for like a Man-Bat design, you know? Like if it weren't for the costume, you wouldn't think Harley Quinn at all. Whereas this didn't need the red and black costuming to tell you that's Harley Quinn. It looks like her if she were a bat. Man, that was disappointing on the interior artist side, because clearly the cover artist here really knew what the right tone, right look was for this. Who did the cover again? Amanda Connor and Hi-Fi did the cover. Yeah. Damn, that's just disappointing. That design was so cool, and it was perfectly... You looked at it and you saw Harley Quinn and Woman Bat, and then this you just see generic Man-Bat look, but with the Harley Quinn costume on. Disappointing. I will give some credit. I'm holding the book upside down to give you a better view of just the Harley Quinn Woman Bat. But like that's a pretty clever page turn, because you got like 2 guys on the previous page complaining about, vomiting on roller coaster rides, and then one just gets pulled up and swept up to the sky. So you get this neat little inverted thing of feeling of looking up, which is just cool. I'll give some credit where it's due for that. I just don't like the design for Harley there. Anyway, the gang of Harleys end up kind of trying to save Harley, but then it's just Harley sees what's her name, Miss Langstrom, attacking people, and so attacks her back, and then the gang of Harleys cure Harley, and blah blah blah. Harley decides to leave Coney Island, and meanwhile Oswald Cobblepot is the bad guy that's orchestrated everything and will be continuing to cause problems for Harley Quinn allegedly in the future. I'm not reading that. I don't care. I really don't. It's just disappointing. Like, I wanted this to be so much better than it is, and it's not. So yeah, I'm not planning to buy any more of this, and I'm just displeased because this is a pure case of the cover being better than the idea, or the execution, I guess. Also, there's a character in here called Red Tool, and there's a look at him with the ninja skin-tight suit on. His name is Red Tool, and he's got like a lot of fourth wall-y style, or not necessarily fourth wall, but like really jokey style humor, and all his speech balloons are in the shape of tools. So kind of a parody of Deadpool, which I guess if you're just going to blatantly make Harley Quinn kind of the DC Deadpool, acknowledging it is at least a step in the right direction by parodying Deadpool in your book. I still feel like that's a mistake to do in general. Yeah, I got nothing. Would not recommend for anything other than the cover. I hate to say it. Let's see here. Jake Carlson says she shouldn't have clothes on her arms because of the wings. Yeah, that's a good point. Man-Bat is actually supposed to be much more important than DCU moving forward. We'll see. He escapes in this issue, and we don't know where he goes, so maybe he's going to have something to do with something. Whatever. Then the final single issue I have this week is Star Wars DJ Most Wanted #1. So you know that scene in the new Star Wars movie that everyone universally praises as the best part of the movie, but no one has any problem with whatsoever? That being, of course, Canto Bite. Well, we're introduced to the character of DJ, who's played by Benicio del Toro. I think, did I get that right? I always fuck up him and Guillermo del Toro. I can never remember which one's which. Anyway, Benicio del Toro, I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna stick to my guns. Plays this hacker character in The Last Jedi, and so we don't know anything about him really. Like, I won't say that. We get information about him through the scenes, but we don't know like what his history is or how he got where he is in the beginning, or the first time we see him in the film. And this fills that in. Basically, that's really all it does is, did you want to know how DJ got into the cell that Finn and Rose found him in? Well, this is the comic for you. Did you care about that? Probably not. Whatever. I will give this some credit. I'm gonna kind of make fun of it because it is pretty comic book tie-in pointless, but I will give some credit. It's smart enough not to try to tell a big epic story with him, though there is a story here. It's smart enough to give you more of just an insight into the character and the way he thinks. To me, DJ is in a lot of ways kind of an anti-Han Solo, like a dark Han Solo. Like, Han Solo is obviously a more morally gray character when we first meet him in the original trilogy, and the big moment of redemption or the big choice for his character arc is to go back and help the rebels fight and destroy the Death Star. So, you know, DJ got a moment like that in The Last Jedi. Spoilers for The Last Jedi, by the way. DJ got a moment like that in The Last Jedi, and he chose the opposite thing to run away, because he and Han kind of had that same thing, like, oh, the only side you can be on is your own. You can't, there is no good, there is no evil, you just got to worry about yourself, you just got to look out for yourself. And so while Han, like, took the heroic mode and went off to become a good person, DJ took the coward's option and continued to look out for himself. So this kind of gives you an idea of what kind of person DJ is, and gives you more of a insight into who he is. And just, it gets a little more into the coding and the kind of moves and tricks he plays. You open the issue. Damn, I got fingerprints on my cover. That's no good. You open the issue, and he is playing essentially blackjack at one of the casinos on Canto Bight, and this droid is telling him, hey, don't hit, that you're gonna lose if you hit, the odds aren't with you, and he decides to hit anyway. So his whole thing with that is that he understands odds, he understands codes and systems, and his thing is to break them. But it seemingly doesn't really work out, because he bet, what is it? Sir, you just lost the gross global product of a small but relatively thriving middle rim planet. Oh well. His thought process is, oh well, I'm just trying to lose money here. So he loses the game, but then you get the ultimate reveal later on that he is gaming the system of the casino itself in order to steal from them. He's set it up so the more he loses, the more he gets back, which is kind of interesting. You get some cool art. Like, I like this page quite a bit of him playing at the casino. Anyway, they figure out his plan, so he goes to another casino to be a high roller there, and then he tries to pull the same thing on them, but some shit happens, some shit goes down with an alias he created, and craziness ensues. So in order to get away from the different mob run casinos and not get the shit kicked out of him, or worse, he turns himself over to the local authorities so that he can be safe. And that's how he gets into the jail cell on Canto Bight. Isn't that magical? Yeah, it's a whatever story. It is pretty much just your really typical tie-in comic that doesn't have much to do with anything, doesn't really advance any actual details, it just kind of rounds out a character, and it does an okay job of that. I think DJ is an interesting character, again, as an anti-Han Solo in some regards, so it's just kind of in the, oh yeah, that was neat to read. Cool. Oh well. Let's see, what are the live comments saying? Okay. Canto Bight's awesome. Fuck the haters. Yeah! I don't hate Canto Bight, I just find the scene goes on for too long. Fair enough. Oh, so it's doing what George Lucas did and putting information in supplementary material, more or less. Not to mention he goes on a rant about not being good and evil, and the First Order blew up 5 planets in the first movie. He goes on a rant about not giving a fuck. And only looking out for himself. Now I'm just... On the top of Canto Bight scene, why didn't Rose and Finn free those kids and take them away from slavery? Those kids are going to get blamed and punished for those things running wild and wrecking the place. I guess. I don't know. It's kind of one of those conceit things. How much could kids do? Like, I don't know. It's a weird conceit. Let's see here. It seemed like they just slave kid, whatever. Anyway, that'll do it for the single issues. Again, I didn't have a ton this week, so I'm going to go ahead and go on to Batman No Man's Land Volume 2 for Trade Talk. So see you, live commenters. Gotta breathe. It's hard to get air going. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Trade Talk. I'm Sid2, and this week we're going over Batman No Man's Land Volume 2. We're continuing this series and getting further and further. So, this is where a lot of the late 90s, early 2000s art starts to really kind of rear its ugly head, and so some of this is just ugly to look at. There's no real way around it, but other times it works. It's that weird in between. A lot of the designs are really cool though, and you do get really great moments. Like this starts to do a lot of stuff with Two-Face, and this is a cool ass Two-Face panel. So I did like that, but I don't know. You start flipping through, and there are other things. It's just like, oh, that is not pretty to look at all. I'm trying to find a good example of it, but nothing's popping up right away. So maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe there's stuff in here that's better than I'm giving it credit for, and then maybe there's stuff that's just like stands out as really, really ugly. I don't know. I don't want to dwell too hard on things that I don't like, you know? But anyway, so this continues the situation, and this volume in particular gets really into the rogues gallery and what they're up to, and the gang warfare dynamic in particular. Particularly advances the shifting power dynamic and changing allegiances going on between Harvey Dent, the Penguin, Jim Gordon, and Batman. Jim Gordon, of course, it's revealed, has allied with Harvey Dent in this volume. And on that note, I gotta go to the cover gallery because this is possibly the worst cover to have used for this volume, because you had Brian Boland here, and you should have used the Brian Boland cover that totally covers a lot of the meat of the story that's presented throughout these issues. This Brian Boland cover is incredible, and it's totally what they should have used. God, I love this one. That's so perfect for a lot of the themes going on in this issue, or in this volume. But anyway, so Harvey has tricked Batman, and Batman has lost territory. Meanwhile, Gordon and Harvey have gained territory because of this trick at the cost of Batman and the Penguin. But there's obviously a shaky alliance between Harvey and Gordon, and so that's kind of what's at fault here, and what we're all wondering about. Ooh, good 2-page spread as someone tries to read Bruce Wayne's mind. It's kind of cool. But, you know, it's just an interesting dynamic as Gordon kind of deals with the fallout of everything. This also is where we get the reveal of who the new Batgirl is, which is Huntress, because Batman puts her in charge of defending their territory, and she loses it to Two-Face. So, like, this is a great ending page for a chapter, as Batman returns to his territory and says, "Tails, you lose." Like, I love the graffiti up at the top, crossed over the Batman symbol. I love the way that this is exactly how Two-Face would take territory from Batman. Anyway, we get the origin for the new Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, who is not taught a language, who's only taught in combat. And that is a really weird idea, but it totally works, and she is the best Batgirl. forever and always, she is the best Batgirl. I love Cassandra Cain as Batgirl so much. It's just the most unique and interesting idea I think I've gotten, or I've seen anyone do for Batgirl. I loved her so much, and when we got to see her, but they ruined it. They ruined it, and they gave us Stephanie Brown, and I'll never understand why. So anyway, Batman tells Huntress, since she failed him, that she can no longer be Batgirl, and makes her give it up. And yeah, becomes, and decides that he's been wrong about trying to defend No Man's Land on his own, and brings his allies in. So Dick and Robin and the rest of the Bat family are here. And Cassandra Cain becomes the new Batgirl because of it, which is cool. I like it. It's a neat way to introduce the Bat family proper, I think. It's the same Batgirl costume, which I think is probably a little disappointing. They maybe should have done something to create more of a apparent difference between Cassandra Cain's Batgirl costume and Huntress's Batgirl costume, because it's kind of like Batman just stole Huntress's and gave it to Cassandra Cain, which is, I don't know, a little weird. Trying to find a good... Oh, there we go. She's definitely drawn differently, I feel, compared to the way Huntress was drawn. So that helps, but still. Anyway, it's just neat to see Two-Face get more to do. He's a character who unfortunately just does not have a ton of stories. Two-Face and the Riddler do not have a ton of stuff. Like, obviously you got Long Halloween, but comparatively you don't see as much with Two-Face done. Nick Sharp is also taken out by Azrael here, and I talked about trying to scratch my head and remember if the Azrael stuff was even in the old volumes. I was told it was, and that is how memorable it is, because Nick Sharp gets taken out, and he's no longer a problem. Yay. There's some stuff with Kirk Langstrom's wife, whose name always escapes me. God damn it. I can never remember her goddamn name. Anyway. So Kirk Langstrom's wife gets a story where she's got a son who's like a little bat boy. It's whatever. Then there's this effort. There's this guy who apparently locked himself in a studio and has power, television studio, and has electricity, let me put it that way. So he's been broadcasting a show every night, and Batman and Oracle hijacked the airwaves in order to broadcast his show to the entire United States to try to help reestablish sympathy for Gotham, which is kind of cool. Get a sense of the way rules have changed with Two-Face again. That was kind of cool. And then we get a Nightwing story where he gets he's given a mission to retake control of Blackgate away from Lockup. And so Nightwing has to work with the villains inside Blackgate in order to take over from Lockup. Though it's kind of funny, and this happens when you get these bigger collections. There's a Catwoman story later on that has the exact same problem, and it's just ridiculous to read. There's like this whole thing with this guy. I have no idea who he is. It's like a conversation about him getting a pig heart. And then there's this whole thing on this other page about some guy confessing to being Nightwing, but his is spelled Nitewing. And I have that is not concluded at all within this volume, and I do not expect it to be. That's just, yeah, here's what was going on in the Nightwing book, and this is why he's in Gotham now, but we're going to continue this plot thread. Okay, whatever. That's just crossovers for you. So Nightwing takes control from Lockup, which is kind of cool. This is a great example of really ugly art. That's just, ugh, to look at. Everything about that is weird. Barbara's face looks so strange. The way they've drawn the bridge of her nose up to her eyes is like a mile long, and her eyes are just... It's not good. It's bad. Then the other story arc that I really, really liked was called Fruit of the Earth, which is a Clayface and Poison Ivy story. And this is interesting because we've been given maps of what Gotham City looks like as far as the gang territory and whatnot throughout the volume. And the middle section there in green is Robinson Park, and it's got Ivy. It's assumed that Ivy's in control of it, but no one really knows because everyone that goes in never comes out. So this does a little backtracking, goes all the way back to day 23 of No Man's Land, and has Clayface go into the park looking for Ivy, and he finds her growing food and taking care of the orphans of Gotham City there, and proposes a plan to her for them to be able to get rich together by, growing produce and selling it, because there's no fresh produce in the city. Again, I really like the way that they're using, these very particular realistic issues, because, yeah, it's a city. You can't necessarily grow food there, especially in winter. So it's just, of course, people would be willing to pay or trade more for fresh produce. So anyway, he proposed this plan to her, and then we don't know necessarily how it goes, but we know Ivy tries to kiss him, do her whole poison kiss thing, but Clayface says, nice try, and so the story develops. And Batman gets interested in what's going on with the park, and we're seeing some evolution. Let me figure something out real quick. Fruit of the Earth. This written by Greg Rucka. Okay, because it's interesting, because we also developed the Officer Pettit storyline here too, where this guy who stayed in No Man's Land because he kind of wanted to just kill crooks and stuff like that. He's like, that power hungry kind of cop. So I was giving Bob Gale some shit, and maybe he still deserves it for that line about, the weak and unmotivated and former welfare recipients in the first volume. But that story also set up the idea that Gordon's going pretty far, but there are guys who want to go farther for malice alone. And so this is kind of extending on that, where this Pettit guy is clearly just out for blood, and Gordon's trying to actually maintain order and decency. So, though this is written by Greg Rucka, so I don't know the behind the scenes drama, if Gale always planned to have that happen, or if Rucka was like, oh, set up my character here and I'll do this story later, or whatever. Anyway, Batman gets into Robinson Park and finds Ivy plastered up in clay with a bunch of children enslaved, and she needs help. So this Fruit of the Earth story I really like, because it gives you this sense of Ivy as that kind of middle ground ambiguous character. And it mentions that she serves the green in here, so there's your whole Swamp Thing connection and everything. But no, this gives you that, like, she isn't evil, because she's taking care of these kids that people just abandon out of the goodness of her heart. She's not getting anything for it. And she has been used. Her stuff is used against her often. But she's still really brutal, because she works with Batman in order to get out of this situation. But at the end of the day, once she's got power over Clayface, she really just demolishes his ass. Man, I love this lines. From me to you, with all of my love. Can you feel that, honey? As, like, she starts growing things inside of Clayface, and just enveloping him. You're good soil, full of nutrients, full of minerals. The roots like you. You're creating life. You're feeding all those plants growing inside you right now. They're going to use you up, just like you tried to do to me, like you tried to do to the children. I offered you a kiss when you first came to my park, and you hit me instead. I've had enough of what you will or won't allow, Batman. So it's really interesting. She just is absolutely merciless to Clayface in what she does to him, and this is really, really great sequence there. But it's definitely much more in the realms of justified. You know, she straight, like, was held, and the dude was doing child slave labor. Clayface, like, please, begging, please, please, do you still want a kiss, lover? Don't make me. I seem to remember begging the same thing of you. And she kisses him, and he just kind of turns into a plant. She completely, you know, destroys Clayface. And then, so Batman makes a deal with her, though, to provide produce for the people of Gotham, but no more than the land can take. That's interesting. You know, I quite like the direction that goes in and everything that deals with. It's just good. I really quite enjoyed that story. It gives you a better insight into Poison Ivy's head. And also on the Two-Face front, you start to get the sense that he is a bad partner to work with, because Gordon tries to cut their alliance via Montoya, and Harvey kidnaps and apparently injures Montoya. So we don't quite know where that's going to go. This also, like, starts to address further the rocky relationship between Batman and Gordon that existed because Batman didn't come to No Man's Land for, like, the first 90 days or whatever. And we get a whole scene with him and Gordon where he tries to talk to him, tries to repair the damage, and it blows up in his face because as he tries to talk and reason with him, Gordon just punches him in the face. So Batman says to leave, and he's like, Two-Face isn't an ally you can trust. And Gordon's response is, neither apparently were you. So there's a rockiness in this bromance right now. And yet, Batman being Batman is, of course, proven right. Because what happens when Two-Face loses half of his gang, and tries to cut ties with not Two-Face. When Gordon loses half of his gang to Pettit and tries to cut ties with Two-Face, oh, well, Two-Face plans to, you know, force Gordon to stick with him. It was just, you know, an interesting little dynamic. It worked well. The wheels are turning, machinations are moving. Then there's a whole story with Catwoman. The reason Batman went into Robinson Park was to try to retrieve some computer disks that somehow hold the future of Gotham. I don't know what those... we never get an explanation for exactly what's on them. But Ivy destroyed the computer disks she found in Robinson Park because they're plastic. They're bad for the Earth. And so Batman needs Catwoman now, who has not been in Gotham. Catwoman has been in New York City. And, man, this story's weird. Like I mentioned that, like, crossovers tend to be weird, where they gotta kind of shoehorn in the crossoverness and still stay true to their current story. So let me just read from some of Catwoman's internal monologue there. I was all set to steal my way back into Gotham when I heard about this little lovely back in Manhattan. It was begging me to take it. And the rest of my little sojourn in the Big Apple didn't go quite as as I would have liked. I took over a big business and ran for mayor. I wound up with my assets frozen or confiscated and forced to assassinate myself. I didn't make any of that up. I want to read that sentence again. I took over a big business and ran for mayor. I wound up with my assets frozen or confiscated and forced to assassinate myself. Comic books are weird, man. So anyway, she steals this cat gem, but then it melts and turns out it was just bait to give her orders from Oracle to get to Gotham City in 12 hours, or it'd be assumed that she couldn't make it. And that immediately pisses Catwoman off, and she knows that that Batman is fucking with her and like intentionally pushing her buttons because he's giving her a challenge and assuming that she can't get there, and he took a toy away from her. So, you know, she knows he's in her head, and that's pissing her off. So she, of course, goes to Gotham. She gets to Gotham, and he gives her a job of stealing some computer disks from a vault in Manhattan that is, of course, under the protection of Bruce Wayne. And why does Catwoman do this? Well, instead of kicking Batman's ass, well, because he kissed her. So this is a weird story. I will say, though, as weird as, like, the contrivances, and the contrivances are out of the fucking park here. As weird as a lot of the contrivances are, including, you know, a guy who has a superpower but doesn't know it, and his superpower is not to be affected by kinetic energy, like explosions. I do like the tone of this Catwoman series because it's all about Catwoman pulling off heists and crimes. Like, the first issue is all about her process of sneaking into Gotham and, you know, having the military chase a piece of bait while she slips under the radar. And then the second issue is all about her performing a heist. And I really like this, where she goes into where the discs are being kept to talk with the security guards, and she's posing as someone from Wayne Enterprises, but they've never heard of her and blah blah blah, and she's like, oh, well, good job, you saw right through that little test of mine, and I wouldn't have expected anything less. Though there is one other thing. We've received reliable information that the criminal known as Catwoman intends to steal the discs. What information? Reliable information. What's your source? Need to know only, Mr. Mosquito, and you don't need to know. Ciao. And then the security guard's like, well, she's got moxie, I'll say that for her. Who? Catwoman. That was her. Straight up Oz. So, like, that's a really cool Catwoman, like, heisty thing to do. And then, like, the heist goes down, and there's, like, explosions, and yada, 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 and Catwoman, pops up and takes out one of the guards, and it's like, oh, if you're wondering how I got into the building with all the chaos outside, I never left. I just stayed in the elevator when I came. And she steals the discs, but it's a double fake because the discs weren't actually where they're supposed to be. But then it's a triple fake because the discs were moved to another location, and she doubled back and stole those discs and replaced them with the copy. And then she's got to find out, like, she wants to plan to, you know, give Batman a middle finger and sell the discs off. And Maxie Zeus gets involved, and it's a whole thing and a half. But it feels, you know, very like, you know, heist movie kind of thing. I like the show White Collar, and it feels just like those same caper. Caper is the word. It feels like a caper story, so that's cool. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and the implication is that she's going to go back to Gotham with the discs, but we don't get any more of that story arc here. We just get another single issue called Power Play that's really not good. It's about Mr. Freeze and what he's up to, and I hate to say, but the best thing about it is the really cool cover. It's a really great Mr. Freeze cover, I'll give it that. For a while, when I first started buying comics, I would just buy things for the cover, and I do have this one really kick-ass Mr. Freeze cover. and this is another one that I'd want just for the cover, but just that issue is really bad because it feels like a 7-year-old wrote it. There's just constant banter between Batman and Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze is not the bantering type, in my opinion, and neither is Batman, particularly this kind of really, really typical comic book banter. Ice is a transient form. It melts, the water evaporates, and then condenses. So what are you saying, Freeze? That you're a big drip? I was making an allusion to the impertinence of change. Things are gonna change, all right. How so? Remember what I said about being 5 moves ahead? Well, that's way too much talking for this fight. It is so unnecessary. Batman blows up Freeze's castle that he's using to control the only working power plant in Gotham, which is a cool follow-up to the Visitor issue in the first volume where Superman restored a power plant for Gotham City, but it immediately fell into the wrong hands, and there's really no way to reason it out to people because of the culture had changed so quickly in Gotham. And people had become so tribal. So, it's a neat idea of a follow-up. Batman, taking some of that power away from Freeze. I'm not quite sure why. We're not given much of a reason beyond Freeze is now killing people, and maybe that's reason enough. But, I don't know. It was a really poorly written issue, specifically on the dialogue front. So, what are you going to do? I do like that Freeze has a giant ice castle, though. That's cool. I gotta see if I can find a good panel of it. But yeah, he just made himself a giant ice castle to guard this power plant. And there's a panel of it cracking, so, coolness. Overall, still loving the series. Still a lot of cool twists and turns. And, Red Leader until he's one of the few people keeping up with each volume that I talk about, and he's like, I like the first volume the most, but once the Bat family and all the other Batman rogues get involved, it just starts to fall apart for me. And I'm like, no, see, that's the thing that I always really liked. It's just you jump in with both feet. This was, again, the first big crossover I read, and it was so cool to get to see all the different Bat family members and all the different villains in this huge interconnected story. I just really like seeing how they are really in control of Gotham, and the odds have never quite been like this for Batman. And he's losing here, It's his whole "I'm alone" or "I don't want help" or I don't want to endanger others" thing is what costs him the most in this story, because he allies with someone who he normally wouldn't, and that bites him because he didn't ally with his normal folks. So I don't know. I really like that. I really like seeing all the different dynamics with the villains. Again, the Poison Ivy Clayface story, Through the Earth, I think is a really, really good Poison Ivy story. It's maybe a little problematic in that she is weak and in distress and stuff, and Batman has to kind of come to her rescue, but at the same time, once she is safe, she's not all, "Oh, Batman, thank you." She is, pissed. And it really works. It's really cool to see kind of her take, and so she is that grayer middle area where she's not just expressly evil, she's doing objectively good things, caring for orphans, right? But her methods are the part where you're like, is that maybe a little much? So I don't know. Plenty of good in this one, though. I really got a kick out of it. Excited to read Volume 3. That'll do it for this week's episode of Trade Talk, though. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time. Bye. How's everyone doing in the live comments, folks? Oh, you're all talking about The Last Airbender? Alright, not much going on with any questions or talking about No Man's Land in the live comments. So, I'm going to call it a night for comic reviews. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Till next time. Bye.